Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Service Dog channel. I'm most definitely not a lawyer, and I don't work in the legal profession. Here's my fair use statement. The Department of Transportation's Disability Bill of Rights obviously applies to airline passengers with disabilities. It's covered by 14 CFR Part 182. You can find information about it at this website. What I'm telling you is taken straight from the Disability Bill of Rights website. The most recent version as of November 2024 was published in July of 2022. There are 10 disability rights for airline passengers who have a physical or mental impairment that permanently or temporarily impacts a major life activity such as walking, hearing, or breathing. It applies to all U.S. airline flights and to all foreign airline flights to or from the United States. Here are your 10 disability rights for disabled airline passengers. Number 1 is the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Airlines and their employees and contractors may not discriminate against individuals with disabilities because of their disabilities. For example, an airline cannot refuse transportation or other services because of one's disability, appearance, or involuntary behavior. An airline can't require passengers with disabilities to use special services or give them restrictions that don't apply to other passengers, except passengers with disabilities may need to check in early, provide advance notice or documentation, or pre-board to receive certain disability-related services. Airline employees must be trained to be aware of disability needs and how to accommodate them safely and with dignity. Employees and contractors must get refresher training at least once every 3 years. The airline's experts in resolving disability-related issues are called CROs, Complaint Resolution Officials, and they have to get refresher training every year. Number 2 is the right to receive information about services and aircraft capabilities and limitations. Airlines must provide passengers with disabilities information about the facilities and services available to them when they request it. The information has to be specific to the aircraft scheduled for the flight unless it's not possible. For example, an unpredictable aircraft substitution occurs. The information must include aircraft-related, service-related, or other limitations on the ability to accommodate passengers with a disability, such as limitations on level entry boarding. Airlines must provide this information to any passenger who states that he or she uses a wheelchair for boarding, even if he or she did not request the information. Any limitations on the availability of storage on the aircraft, limitations of assistive devices, the specific location of seats with movable aisle armrests, whether the aircraft has an accessible lavatory, that means restroom, and the types of services that are not available on the flight. Number 3 is the right to receive information in an accessible format. If the airline uses an aircraft with more than 60 seats, then the airline's primary website must be accessible. Also, they have to install accessible model automated kiosks after December of 2016 at U.S. airports with 10,000 boarding passengers per year until 25% of the kiosks at each airport location are the accessible models. Passengers who identify as needing visual or hearing assistance have to be given prompt access to the same trip information as other passengers at the gate, ticket area, customer service desk, and on the aircraft, as long as it doesn't interfere with the employee's safety duties. Airlines have to train personnel to recognize requests for communication accommodation. The personnel must be trained to use the most common methods for communicating with individuals who are blind, deaf, or hard of hearing that are readily available, such as writing notes, for example. Personnel must also be trained to use established methods for communicating with deaf-blind passengers when they are available, such as passing out braille cards if available, reading an information sheet that a passenger provides, or communicating through an interpreter, for example. Number 4 is the right to accessible airport facilities. Airlines and U.S. airport operators are both responsible for the accessibility of airport facilities. In general, airlines must ensure that terminal facilities that they own, lease, or control are readily accessible and usable by passengers with disabilities at U.S. airports and readily usable at foreign airports. Airports are responsible for ensuring compliance of facilities that they own, operate, or lease to other parties, including airlines. Airlines must ensure an accessible route is available between the gate and the aircraft boarding location. When level entry boarding is not available, such as boarding by a jet bridge, airlines in U.S. airports must ensure ramps or mechanical lifts are available to service most flights. Airlines must also provide service animal relief areas at the airport. Number 5 is the right to assistance at airports. When requested, passengers with disabilities must be provided prompt and timely assistance getting on and off the airplane from properly trained personnel. This includes the services of personnel and the use of ground wheelchairs, accessible motorized carts, boarding wheelchairs, onboard wheelchairs, and ramps or mechanical lifts as needed. Assistance with moving from the curb to the departing flight, assistance with transportation between gates to make connections, and assistance with moving from the arriving flight to the curb for pickup. Assistance with accessing key functional areas of the terminal, such as the ticket counter or baggage claim, or to the restroom entrance if there's time. Escorting a passenger with a service animal to an animal relief area at a U.S. airport. Passengers who request assistance in advance of arriving at the airport need to identify themselves to the airline personnel once they arrive at the airport or the gate to receive the assistance. Airlines can't require passengers to accept a specific form of assistance that they don't request. For example, requiring a wheelchair when a blind person asks for a guide. Also, the airline can't leave a passenger unattended for more than 30 minutes in a wheelchair or other immobile device. Number 6 is the right to assistance on the aircraft. Airlines must allow passengers with a disability additional time or assistance to board, stow accessibility equipment, or be seated, or the opportunity to board before all other passengers. The exception is when an airline has an open seating policy. They can accommodate extra time for passengers after the initial group of passengers have boarded, but early in the boarding process. Passengers with disabilities have to be given prompt and timely boarding and deplaning assistance upon request from properly trained airline personnel. This includes assistance with moving to and from seats. If level loading bridges are not available, a lifting device must be provided to assist persons with limited mobility to get safely on and off the aircraft at most U.S. airports, except when boarding smaller aircraft of less than 19 seats. For smaller aircraft and smaller airports or foreign airports, airlines must ensure boarding and deplaning assistance by any available means acceptable to the passenger. However, airlines must never hand carry a passenger. That means directly pick up a passenger's body in the arms of airline personnel to carry them on or off an aircraft, except in an emergency. Once a passenger with a disability is boarded, airlines must provide assistance if requested, such as moving to or from the bathroom, including using an onboard chair to assist if requested, and stowing and retrieving carry-on items, including assistive devices. Number 7 is the right to travel with an assistive device or service animal. The first part of number 7 is traveling with assistive devices on aircraft. Airlines must allow assistive devices as carry-ons in the cabin free of charge, consistent with safety rules. This includes medical devices and/or a personal amount of medication that assists the passenger with his or her disability. Assistive devices must not count against the passenger's carry-on limit. Priority in-cabin stowage, either a closet or a row of seats designated for seat strapping, must be available for at least one normal-size collapsible manual wheelchair in any aircraft with 100 or more passenger seats. Airlines that use seat strapping should provide space for at least 2 of these wheelchairs if stowing the second wheelchair wouldn't displace passengers. The priority stowage requirements don't apply to older aircraft. Manual wheelchairs that can't be transported in the cabin have to go in the cargo department consistent with safety and security requirements. Airlines have to accept a battery-powered wheelchair if it fits in the cargo compartment and can be transported consistent with safety and security requirements. Airlines assure the checking and timely return of assistive devices at the gate for use in the terminal. If an airline loses, damages, or destroys a wheelchair or other assistive device, the airline must provide compensation in an amount up to the original purchase price of the wheelchair or device. The second part of number 7 is traveling with service animals. Airlines must allow a service dog to accompany a passenger with a disability in the aircraft cabin unless the dog poses a direct threat to the health or safety of others, the dog causes a significant disruption or misbehaves in the cabin or at an airport gate area, the dog's transportation would violate a U.S. or foreign law, or current Department of Transportation forms were not provided as required by the airline for the trip. A decision by airline personnel to refuse transportation of a service dog with the passenger must be based on an individualized and objective assessment of the dog that considers the nature of the risk and the likelihood that harm will actually or continue to occur. The assessment should also consider whether there was a way to reduce the severity or seriousness of the problem. Airlines cannot deny transportation of the service dog if there was a way to reduce the seriousness of the problem. Number 8 is the right to receive seating accommodations. Airlines must provide specific seats to the following passengers who identify to airline personnel as needing the seat if the seat exists on the same class of service they reserved on the aircraft. When the passenger uses an aisle chair to board and can't transfer easily over a fixed aisle armrest, the airline must provide a movable aisle armrest. When the passenger travels with a service animal that's best accommodated at a particular seat, they must provide a bulkhead seat or other seat in the same class. When the passenger has a fused or immobilized leg, they must provide a seat with greater leg room in the same class. An adjoining seat must be provided for a companion providing certain types of assistance like a personal care attendant who performs a function that's not required to be performed by airline personnel, like assisting a passenger with eating, a reader for a passenger who's blind or has low vision, an interpreter for a passenger who's deaf or hard of hearing, or a safety assistant for a passenger who cannot assist with their own evacuation. For passengers not previously specified, airlines must provide a seat assignment that best accommodates their disability if the passenger meets the airline's procedures. Airlines must provide seating accommodations using one of 3 methods: the normal boarding method, or the priority method, or pre-boarding if the airline doesn't provide advanced seat assignments. Number 9 is the right to accessible aircraft features. New aircraft delivered to the United States Airlines after April of 1992 and to foreign airlines after May of 2010 must have accessible features that include movable aisle armrest on half of the aisle seats if the aircraft has 30 or more seats, priority stowage space for wheelchairs in the cabin for aircraft with 100 or more seats, at least one accessible restroom if the aircraft has more than one aisle, an onboard wheelchair if the aircraft has an accessible restroom or the passenger gives the airline advance notice that he or she can use an inaccessible restroom and needs an onboard wheelchair to reach it. Airlines with older aircraft with 30 or more seats that replace the aisle seats must ensure half of these seats have movable aisle armrest. Also, if the airline replaces a restroom on a twin-aisle aircraft, there must be at least one that's accessible. And number 10 is the right to resolution of disability-related issues. Airlines must provide a complaint resolution official, CRO, in a timely manner, and it can be by phone. The CRO should be trained as an expert in resolving disability-related issues and be able to resolve disability-related issues on the spot. Passengers with disabilities who are not satisfied with their air travel services can file a complaint with the airline or the Department of Transportation. Airlines have to respond and directly address the disability-related issues in your complaint in writing within 30 days, but they're not required to address complaints sent in more than 45 days after the incident unless the complaint is referred to the airline by the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation will refer all disability-related complaints it receives within 6 months of the incident for response by the appropriate carrier. The Department of Transportation investigates all disability-related complaints it receives to determine if a violation of the Air Carrier Access Act has occurred. Passengers with disabilities who have urgent questions about their rights should ask to speak with the airline CRO. Airlines must have a CRO available at each airport they serve during the times that the airline is operating at the airport. Passengers may also contact the Department of Transportation Disability Hotline at 1-800-778-4838. The hours for the hotline are 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday, but the website does not specify which time zone that's in. For more information like this, check out one of my playlists while you do laundry, fold clothes, sit in traffic, or walk your dog. Subscribe to the Service Dog channel.